In this next section, we're going to be talking about some of the basic ideas about government found within the Declaration of Independence, and that first famous line that most people equate with the Declaration is, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. So going back to our first unit of the year, this idea on human equality, equality under the law.
So I have a question about that. Does that mean that all people are the same?
No, it does not have anything to do with in terms of we all have the same housing, the same type of job, the same income, not at all. But it does mean that the way that the law applies to everyone throughout the country is the idea that we're all equal in the eyes of the law, which is something that is definitely an important principle of American democracy.
Okay, good. So it's not equality as in everybody is the same. It's equality as in everybody has the same rights and responsibilities according to the Constitution and according to law.
Correct.
Okay. The next part of that section is also part of the natural rights theory that we discussed earlier in the year. And that is they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is almost word for word from Locke with his natural rights theory of life, liberty, and property. The only change there is that he changed property to pursuit of happiness. But what he means by this is that no matter what government system they set up, whether it be a democracy, dictatorship, theocracy, whatever it is, these are constant, that these rights cannot be taken away. However, one of the problems with it is that it's kind of vague, right? It's like, what would constitute life, liberty, and property? So could you help clarify, what does that actually mean?
Right. Well, I think the line, life, we all have the right to be alive and not live in a place where, people are just being either executed or certainly attacked by their own government officials, things like that, which does happen in some places around the world. Liberty, freedom, through our various constitutional rights and things that we have here. And I think the one that is the most open to interpretation is pursuit of happiness. How do you want to define happiness? A lot of people have different definitions of that, but I think it means that whatever you believe happiness to be, you should have a right to pursue that to the best extent possible.
And I think some people, if they took an economic perspective on that, that would be more in line with like a freer and open market system where you didn't have as much government control, as that you had the right to pursue or own property, to acquire property through your talents and abilities. So it could also be taken in that direction, depending on your point of view.
Also a good movie with Will Smith, Pursuit of Happiness.
That is.
Which actually follows a lot of the principles in here, if you watch it.
I like the basketball scene, I may insert that. Anyway.
All right, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. I think it's important. At the beginning of the year, we looked at different forms of government. It could be a monarchy. It could be a dictatorship. But in this idea, a principle of our country is that we, the people, are the ones that create the government. The people are the ones that come together and decide what is best for the country as a whole. So this idea that men, people coming together to create their government is really unique, especially at the time that our Declaration of Independence was written.
Yeah, because democracies hadn't been tried on a large scale since ancient Greece and Rome.
Correct.
Okay, so this was at the time, a radical idea that people hadn't tried in millennia. Okay, the next part of that same phrase, actually, that same passage, is deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. What that means is that a government doesn't just have ultimate power to create laws and to administer them on its own. The power comes from the people themselves. So similar to what we talked about with a democracy, that you need consent of the governed. And that also goes into social contract theory, that people give up certain rights to the government in exchange for the government protecting their natural rights, providing services, keeping them secure. If any one of them violates those rights, like if the government violates your ability, we'll get to that in a second, then you have the right to revolt. But this part has to do with consent of the governed. In a democracy, that consent is given how? Like, how do we give our consent to the government?
Well, last Tuesday, we had our midterm elections here in the country, and voting is one way that we can peacefully give consent to whether we like the way things are being run or we don't. We like this person for office or we want to choose someone else. So, we exercise our consent through voting. And the last form is really this right to revolution or the right to revolt. So, If the government doesn't live up to protecting our natural rights, if the government no longer allows us to provide consent, then, according to the Declaration, we have a right to alter or to abolish it. Now, obviously, in the way we did this with the British was through a revolutionary war, so actual physical, violent means through warfare in order to change that. But we can also alter our government through a constitutional amendment. We can alter it through various ballot initiatives, as some states have done through last week's election. So it doesn't always mean. When you hear revolt, it doesn't always have to be a violent way, but it can be done through peaceful means as well.
Did you catch that? If not, go back 10 seconds. So Adams, the right to revolt, he thought that this was a way, like a pressure release valve for people to vent their frustrations and to kind of revolt in a way without actually having a violent revolution, that elections and the ballot helps us do that.